Hey, what's good, people? Mr. Zensfer here. Continuing with our RENOISE beginner tutorial series, today we're going to be looking at the pattern matrix, which is this section here, and the pattern sequencer, which is this section here. These two sections kind of function together with the pattern editor to help you create arrangements for your songs and other compositions. Just kind of picking up where we left off with part 2, we've got this kind of stupid beat that we made. And we explored like some interpolation of data here. I think what I'm going to do is just take this volume column off. Just cutting that out after selecting it, and that way our hi-hats won't do that fade like they were doing before. Looks like we lost a hi-hat in here too. So I'll put this on here. One thing I didn't really mention in the pattern editor is you can make a selection and you can drag it, and you can see how that little icon is changing to a plus. That's because I'm holding the command key to duplicate it. So that is one way of duplicating material. And you can do that across different tracks. And it doesn't have to be just a small selection. You can make big selections and duplicate material wherever you need it just by hitting that command key. So that's something, I don't think I mentioned that in the last one, but that's a good thing to know, because sometimes you don't want to re-input the note, especially if you're all over the keyboard, who knows where it is, and you just want to duplicate it. You can just do that by clicking and dragging. Okay, so pattern matrix and pattern sequencer. We've got this pattern, but it just kind of loops continuously, right? We hit the end, goes back to the beginning, and that's obviously not a song, and we want to make a song. So the first thing that we want to look at is over here, we've got these plus and minus keys. And you can see if you hover there, it brings up tooltips like so many things in RENOISE do, which is always handy. If we hit this minus key, we lose our pattern altogether, so we don't want to do that. So I'm going to undo that with Control Z, brings it back. And then if we hit this plus key, it creates a new empty blank pattern. And you'll notice that this pattern is now 40 steps in length, which is actually 4 times 16, so 64. Whereas this one is 80. And that's because our song options, I think, we want to go to options. Song options. This parameter right here, default pattern length, is set to 40. So I'm going to just change this to 80. Just for consistency within this particular project. We have some other options here, but we can look at those in depth another time. And then when we create a new pattern, it should now be the same length as our old pattern, 80. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, depending on what kind of music you're doing and how big a block you want to work in and what your lines per beat is. You can change your kind of default song pattern length using that option in the song options menu. Okay, so we want to copy some of this material over. There are lots of different ways of doing that. We can select and then hit Command C and select here and hit Command V, and that works. And you'll notice that this little icon appeared here. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to show you some other ways that you can duplicate material. You notice when you come towards the bottom edge of this pattern, you get this icon. You can then click and drag downward, which will also kind of clone the pattern. And you can do that with multiple patterns at a time. So we can select those and clone those down. And now we have, very exciting, a duplication of that original pattern. Okay, but there are other ways of doing this, so let's erase this here. This icon down here duplicates the current pattern and sets it into a new pattern all of its own. You'll notice we have different numbers here. That means this is a different pattern than this one. even though we have the same data. And that's what this little icon in the bottom here, it looks like a little infinity sign or something like that. Or maybe it's 0, 0, but I think it's supposed to be like an infinity sign. That option is show identical repeated slots. So I just right-clicked on a pattern, and we have these options to show track names, which if we disable that, show track meters, we can disable that, show track colors, we can disable that, and show identical repeated slots, we can disable that. And then that icon goes away, and we no longer know if these patterns are identical. I generally like to have all of these activated, although I've only recently started activating the identical repeated slots. But I think it is kind of useful because then you get just like a little bit of a visual cue of where your repetitions are and where they aren't. We can also, as you see, as we continue this with the identical slots, we get this kind of gradient across the patterns, which just shows that it's kind of a nice visual way of showing that that's repeating information. Okay, so we looked at this, and if we right-click here, oh no, I'm sorry, that's the same as left-clicking here. If we right-click on the plus, it creates an alias of the pattern that we were selected on before. This box here shows the selection. And you can see this gray box around here and this gray box around here, and they both have the number 1. An alias means that this pattern is just a repetition of this pattern, and that the data is not stored distinctly. So any changes we make to this pattern will be embodied in this pattern and any other aliases that we choose to create. And you can have as many aliases as you want. You can also alias different patterns. So even though this is all the same data, these 3 patterns, 0, 0, and 0, are all just one pattern, this pattern 0. And these 4 patterns that are all indicated with 1s here are all this pattern 1. And we can show that if we, say I just delete this. Oh no, it doesn't work on that level. That's interesting. So it shifted all of the values. It works on the level of the pattern editor. Say I delete some of these kicks here. You can see that those are changing in the other patterns here, right? So now this pattern doesn't have those first few kicks. Same here. And same here, because they're the same pattern. This is just a repetition of this pattern. Whereas these numbers on this side show you the sequence kind of without change of what's actually playing. I hope that makes sense. We can also alias patterns in the pattern matrix. So if you double click, no, I'm sorry, you don't double click. You can right click and then do create alias or hit Command P, and then you can type in a pattern number that you want this pattern to reference. So if I hit 0, oh, well, maybe that doesn't work because this is already an alias. So let me try that again. So let's create a new pattern, and let's just clone this pattern. We'll clone this all, drag it down. But say we want this to do exactly what this is going to do. We can hit Command P and then type in 0. And now we can see that this pattern refers to this pattern, and they're kind of linked. So if we continue duplicating this, then we have these multiple copies of this reference pattern, pattern 0. And you can tell the difference. The reference pattern, the number is in the center, and the aliases, the number is in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you get confused, that's what's going on there. And say we copy this over, and you can click and drag, and again, I use the Command key as a modifier to change that to a plus sign, and that allows us to copy. And that works like pretty much everywhere in RENOISE when you hold Command with a click drag. you can copy the source material, whatever it may be, even if it's like DSP or automation devices or modulation devices rather. So this aliasing can be useful for a variety of things. So if you know that you have like some variations that you want to build into your structure, you can alias certain parts of it so that those parts of the structure will kind of move together, as it were. So let's maybe take an example of this here. So I'm going to go back and fix my kicks here. So we'll do recording 16. Okay, so we've got our kicks. And let's just build this up here. So I'm going to clone this current pattern. Oh, you also can do Command K to clone the pattern. And let's just do 4 kind of measures, which is actually, or 4 patterns, which is going to be 16 bars, since each pattern is 8 beats, which is going to be 2 bars. And let's say we want the first and third to be the same and the second and fourth to be the same. So the easiest way to do that is we've got the 0 and 1 here. We can click here and then hit Command and the left arrow to change that to 0. And then if this pane has keyboard focus, we can then do the same thing down here. And change that to 1. So when this has keyboard focus, you just can use the left and right arrows to change the pattern number. And when you have keyboard focus somewhere else, you can do Command left and right, either in the pattern matrix or the pattern editor. Hope that makes sense. So Command left and right will change the pattern sequence number. Unless you have this focused, and then it's just left and right. We'll change the number. You can also double click and type in whatever number you want. And you'll notice we still have our pattern sequence indicator on the left side showing which is first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, so now if we say leave these the same, but just for shits, we could change the clap pattern. We'll add another clap here. So now that's also changed here. So this is kind of an easy way to build up repetitive structures in your music. And again, you can do this on the pattern sequence level, or you can also do it on the pattern matrix level. So if we wanted to make these unique again, I'm just going to bring my keyboard focus back over. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Mistype here. I'm going to make these unique again. So each of these is their own pattern. And then we can select these together and hit Command P and hit 0 and enter. And now all of these, oh, I'm sorry, that's actually not what I wanted to do. So I'm just going to hit Command U, and that will make them unique. These were the ones I wanted. Grab those, Command P, hit 0, enter, enter, enter. And now these refer to that, right? And the reason the 0 comes up is each of these is showing where the alias kind of originator is, right? Does that make sense? So we click on this pattern, it says, hey, I'm not actually this pattern, I'm actually this pattern. And that's letting you know. And then we could do this and do Command P once again, hit 1, hit enter, and oops. Now, when we're selecting this, this 1 shows up to show us that this is the source pattern. And this little icon is still there. That little infinity sign is still there because it's the same data as the pattern above. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. This can be, a useful way to build repetitive structures in your music. A lot of music is repetitive, or at least a lot of electronic music, dance music is quite repetitive. So having these kind of like visual cues around your repetition can be really useful. So let's talk a little bit more about the pattern sequencer. So we didn't talk about this button. This button adds a section header, and we can just call this beat. You can call it whatever you want. But now this is here. And a couple useful things. We've got this kind of narrow rectangle, and then we've also got this blank square for the section. Now if we click on this square, all of these become selected. And we could say, oops, I'm sorry. If this has keyboard focus and we click here and we do Command D, then we can duplicate this whole section. And you'll notice that this is now selected as well. So if we hit Command D again, now we've just quadrupled the length of our song. All right, so this can be a useful way of building out structure kind of quickly. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to, do this for your whole track with the same beat. Maybe do, I don't know. It just depends on what you're trying to do compositionally. But this is kind of a quick and useful way to build structure quickly. This button right here is the loop button. So we can select individual patterns to loop. So it's just going to play pattern 1 as long as this gray rectangle is activated. We can select multiple patterns, and it's just going to loop between those two. We can select this, and it will grab all of them in the section. We can do hold shift and press that, and now it's got all of these, right? And if we wanted to add one, we can do, oh no, I guess we can't do command. We can only do shift. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that can be very useful for kind of like auditioning parts of your song, or if, say you're working on a song and this is your last pattern, and you're really like working on this section, you can loop this last section while you're working on it so that it doesn't return back to the beginning of the song. Because that can be annoying, because then you have to scroll down again and get to the end of your song, or, have your keyboard focus here and make sure you're not in a header and hit end. And that actually brings you to the last track, but then you bring your keyboard focus here and hit end, and then it brings you to the last section, so on and so forth. It can be useful to keep your loop in one place so you know kind of what you're working on, and you don't keep going back to the beginning of the song. Because most people are going to kind of work sequentially through the music, although you may have like sketched out some macro structure as well. So I hope that makes sense. These buttons that have the square also double as kind of like playhead buttons. So you can just click play on one of those, and it'll play that pattern next. And if you hold shift, you can select multiple patterns for play. And you can just kind of skip around, and you'll see that this follows which pattern you selected next. And obviously, since all of these patterns contain the same data, you don't hear the difference. But that can be useful for kind of like auditioning different arrangements. You can hear how it would sound, say, if you did, your bridge section after your chorus or before your verse, or, whatever, did that transition at the end of a different section, or put your builder riser in some other spot. That function allows you to do that pretty easily. There's also the possibility to label each individual pattern by sliding this out to the right. And I don't think there's too much limitation on that real estate. Let's see how far I can get. No, I guess that's it. Okay. So you get a little bit of labeling there. And let's see, what else? So that's the pattern matrix button, which you can collapse. We also have the ability to resize our patterns. So we can left click this to make it smaller, in the vertical dimension, and we can right click this to make it smaller in width. And same thing here, we can make it bigger vertically by left clicking and make it wider horizontally by right clicking. You can also do the same thing by using the mouse wheel. And let's see. So the mouse wheel hovered over the pattern matrix using command will change the height, and using command and option will change the width. So if you really like a more compact interface, you have a lot of tracks, you can make them really tiny, or if you're Mr. Galaxy wide, you can do that. I don't know why you would want to do that, but maybe you do. Maybe you just have 13 monitors and you want each track to be on its own monitor, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Okay, that I think pretty much covers it as far as the pattern matrix and the pattern arranger. Oh, no, it really doesn't, because you can also, you can mute things. So you can select something and then hit enter, and then that will no longer play. Oops, I just cloned that, but that's okay. So you can select different parts of your pattern to drop in and drop out, and that can be a very kind of like effective arrangement tool. Obviously, you can like bring patterns onto other tracks. Say you have different effects processing on one track than another, but you want that same note data to go through for an accent or something like that. You can just grab things. The muting of patterns is very useful and allows you to kind of like build up arrangement rather quickly. So that's one of the great things about RENOISE, is that you can be very kind of like time efficient in creating your arrangements because it's really easy to kind of like duplicate and propagate information in a way that allows you to create variation, but also kind of like keeps your basic structure really accessible. So even just doing a simple arrangement like something like this in combination with automation, which we'll talk about in another video, can allow you to make a song really quickly. Let's see, anything else I wanted to cover on this one? You can mute individual tracks by left clicking the play icon here to turn them on or off. And if you right click, you can solo tracks. So that is useful. There are also key commands for muting and soloing. At least on my keyboard, it's shift and backslash should mute a track. It does. And then command and backslash will solo a track. So that's a really handy one if you're doing some sound design and need to really just focus in on one track. You can solo the track and then unsolo it. And that key command also works from the instrument editor, which is great. So let's see, what else? Track colors. You can click on a color and change it. You can grab from a swatch and it will change to it. You can change the color and then right click on a swatch to save that color. You can also control the background blend so that your track colors kind of bleed into your pattern editor. So you can see how much, or basically just, it's a visual cue that helps you keep track of what track you're working on. And you can do that on an individual track basis. Let's see, let's get this over here so we can see what we're doing. So you can do that on an individual basis, or you can click this, apply to all tracks, and then they can all have that kind of same value, same degree of value. Hope that makes sense. And then you can just click off of that. There are, more key commands that you can learn, but we'll dive into preferences and key commands in another video. So in any case, I hope this is useful, helpful. Hope that kind of clears up some of the mysteries of the pattern matrix and the pattern sequencer. And yeah, keep making lots of music. Have a great day. Ciao.